And welcome back to another 3 Martini Lunch. I am not Greg. My name is Craig. I try to be as close as possible to Greg when filling in here. And, of course, we have the Jim with us. I love in the title of your line there under you, your name tag, it says the Jim, which is very, very important here. How you doing, buddy?
It's good to see you again, Craig. Thanks for stepping in for Greg. And, it started out as a joke. Every once in a great while, I do get recognized in public, and whoever I'm with instantly concludes that I have paid that person to come up to me. And that's not awesome. Not very noble behavior. But we begin today's podcast by referring to our first of 3 excellent podcasts, Noble Gold. Now, if you're looking to create a stable financial future, you're going to want to look into Noble Gold Investments. They live up to their name. They are a U.S.-based team with real people and real support. Easy to reach weekdays and even Saturdays. There's no funny business. The pricing is clear and upfront with no hidden fees or tricky fine print. And they are here to serve. They anticipate questions and guide you through complex topics with patience and clarity. We're talking about people who know the markets, they know the metals, they know the strategies, and they can explain them to you in a way that's easy to understand. So now it's time for you to take advantage of this limited time offer. Open a new qualified IRA or cash account with Noble Gold, and you will get a free 10-ounce silver flag bar plus a silver American Eagle proof coin. Visit Noble Gold Investments /3ML. That is noblegoldinvestments.com/3ML.
Okay, let's get right into it. We will go immediately to the good martini. And honestly, this is the least fun of the 3 martinis. It's still a good martini, but it's the least fun. It's going to get progressively more fun as we go here. Unsurprising that a whole lot of Democrats don't want to shell out tons of money to the Democratic Party after everything we've seen happen. And I'd love even more that one of the potential things they would have spent money on was headlined by Kamala Harris. And people were like, no. Or they might have been even stronger in their words for that. Jim, tell us more about this story about the Republican National Committee outfunding the Democratic Party by so much right now.
Yeah, look, it's not surprising. The Republican fundraising is doing better than Democratic fundraising. It's been the case through much of the year. The most recent numbers, the Republican National Committee had receipts of $10.7 million in the most recent month, $86 million in cash reserves as it started October. Pretty solid numbers at this point in a midterm cycle. The Democratic National Committee, in significant more trouble, raised $10.3 million, which isn't that bad, pretty close to the RNC. But they only have about $12 million in cash on hand. But as you mentioned, this comes to us from the Wall Street Journal, very revealing that the DNC wanted to host a San Francisco area fundraiser. It was going to be, headlined by former Vice President Kamala Harris. For those who have forgotten, Kamala Harris served as vice president for 4 years. I know it feels like she just disappeared. She was on her book tour for a while. Yeah. Not only does the message, that, according to the Wall Street Journal's reporting, most donors rejected the request. Upon receiving the invitation, one replied with a profanity-laced rejection. Others said they didn't want to give to the party until it produced substantive plans to win elections. Those who declined also told the National Party they had commitments and couldn't make it work. Sorry, DNC, I had to wash my hair that night. Look, not exactly shocking. I think it's probably unnerving for Kamala Harris is from California. She used to be San Francisco DA. It's one of her hometowns. You figure if she'd have appeal anywhere, it would be there in San Francisco. I think this is a demonstration that Democratic donors are still mad as hell over the 2024 election results. Donated a ton of money, $1 billion spent between the Biden and Harris campaigns. And they don't, where did the money go? Apparently they ended the year with debt. And so, I'm not shocked by this. Now, does this mean Republicans are guaranteed to have a great midterm? No. A lot of factors go into it. A lot of time between now and then. But if you're a Republican, you'd rather have good numbers, and these are pretty darn good numbers.
Yeah, I think you'd rather have a whole lot of money. And I love the fact that you said that Harris raised a bunch of money, and you have no idea what happened to it. Not just that they wound up in debt, but you look at how terrible the campaign went and how they lost every swing state. And you say to yourself, what did my money buy me? It bought me absolutely nothing. Yeah. All right. Go ahead.
I was going to say little anecdotes like building the set for Oprah for the interview and stuff like that. One of the things that becomes clear is that the Harris campaign, and Harris herself has said, well, we took over in midsummer. We were in a rush. We had to do this really fast. And I guess everybody knows that when you have to do really fast, if you tell that campaign it's going to cost X amount, and you make X the biggest number you could possibly, plausibly justify, they're going to have to say, okay, because they don't have time to haggle. And so that may be a contributing factor in all this. But also, they didn't get their money's worth. So anyway.
No. Yeah, and the Call Her Daddy set that they had to pay for, too. I remember that one. I wonder what happened to that, by the way. But all right.
That's a good point.
This
is the sort of thing that could drive you to drink.
Yes, it is.
It could drive you to drink, and that's probably why you would need dose for your liver. Did you know that the liver is the second largest organ in your body? Yes, gentlemen, the second. I know you want to brag. But it's responsible for more than 500 functions in your body. But for some reason, liver health just doesn't get the attention it deserves. More than 30% of Americans have a sluggish liver, a problem that often goes undetected until the very last minute. Dose for Your Liver was formulated to cleanse your liver of unwanted elements, aid digestion, and maintain your body's filter. The science-backed formula promotes liver function, helps your digestion, eases bloating, and can even boost your energy levels. So support your health with Dose Daily. You can save 25% on your first month when you subscribe at dosedaily.com/3ml, or just enter the code 3ml at checkout. Please note that the 25% discount applies only to subscription orders, not one-time purchases. But you can cancel anytime, so there's no hassle. That's Dose Daily, DOSEDAILY.co, not .com, pardon me, I misspoke earlier, .co/3ml to get 25% off your first monthly subscription with the code 3ml.
All right, it's time to move on to our bad martini. The bad martini really amuses me, Jim, mostly because Trump has said several times now that he could just give himself $230 million. I think that was his statement. Some of the effect of, I don't know if I want to do it, it'll go to charity, but maybe I'll hand myself some cash. That's not exactly how this works, apparently. But there is some legal moves that have been made that might end up with the taxpayers giving money to Trump for some lawsuits, right? How does this exactly work?
Yeah, this is a headache for the administration, an utterly unneeded headache for the administration. And the president is simultaneously saying it doesn't matter to him, but also he very much wants this money. Covered by a whole bunch of media, but here's the New York Times write-up. President Trump is demanding that the Department of Justice pay him about $230 million in compensation for the federal investigations into him, according to people familiar with the matter, who added that any settlement might ultimately be approved by senior department officials who defended him or those in his orbit. The situation has no parallel in American history. Trump, a presidential candidate, was pursued by federal law enforcement and eventually won the election, taking over the very government that must now review his claims. Trump submitted complaints through an administrative claim process that is often the precursor to lawsuits, lodged in late 2023. Now, here's the thing. There are a couple ways we could resolve. One is that kick the can down the road and not have this resolved while Trump is president of the United States. I think that is, Second thing is there's got to be a judicial process. Have some other branch of the government look at this and have a judge say, yes, President Trump was wrongly prosecuted. These are politically motivated or something. And then you have it. So it's not just the idea that President Trump is going to tell the Department of Justice, I think because I was wrong, you should pay me $230 million. And Department of Justice officials appointed by President Trump would then turn around and say, yes, sir, we'll get right on that and cut him a check. Yeah. No, Mr. President, that's not the way this works. That's not how any of this works, as they say on the commercial.
I love it. What's funny about it is I tried to put myself in the shoes of one of the people being asked to approve it. Like, I just got appointed by Trump, and I'm sitting there, and they're like, hey, man, write him a check for $230 million from the taxpayers. I would also probably just nod my head like, yeah, I want to stay at this job. I want to keep this. So sure, 240, 235, what do you need? I'll add a couple of zeros at the end.
Look, is there a strong, I understand why the president feels the way he did.
Yeah.
There is a process to adjudicate this when somebody feels like the Department of Justice went after them on specious reasoning or something like that. But the president himself cannot decide this. Trump even commented, this is a really weird situation. Well, it's not just a really weird, it's a very glaring, flashing neon sign of conflict of interest. You cannot be the guy who decides whether or not you get paid. You need some other outside adjudicating force to do this. I suspect it would not shock me if this ended up in front of the Supreme Court, like seemingly every other decision reached by this administration.
Well, sure. And if the Supreme Court decides in favor of Trump, they'll say that it's the most conservative Supreme Court ever. Yes. If they disagree with him, media will just ignore it.
All right. Well, if you're going to show up in front of the Supreme Court or any other court, you want to look your best.
Yes.
You know the saying, you look good, feel good? The problem is most dress clothes only check one of those boxes. Sure, they look sharp, but they can be stiff, hot, high maintenance, which makes it hard to actually feel comfortable. That is why when Greg Corombos walks into a room, people say, wow, he's a sharp-dressed man. ZZ Top starts playing. And that's because he wears Mizzen and Maine. Mizzen and Maine makes classic menswear with a performance fabric, so it's effortless to look sharp and feel great. Right now, Mizzen and Maine is offering our listeners 20% off their first purchase at mizzenandmaine.com, promo code 3ML20. That's Mizzen, spelled Mizzen. Think of like a mitten, but with Z's instead of T's. And Maine, MAIN.com, promo code 3ML20 for 20% off. That's Maine as in Main Street, not Maine as in the state of Maine, which we'll be talking about in a moment. Mizzenandmaine.com, promo code 3ML20. And if you'd rather shop in person, you can find Mizzen and Maine stores in select states.
All right, and now it's time to go to one of the most ridiculous, craziest, and somewhat hilarious stories that we've seen in a while in the world of politics. A Democratic Senate candidate in Maine accidentally, according to him, got a Nazi tattoo. This was a whoops-a-daisy of a thing. This candidate has been embroiled in controversy after controversy, so it's kind of amazing to see this be the ultimate one that might be the thing that actually gets people to talk about how terrible of a candidate he is. But, Jim, what do we have on this story?
Graham Plattner, Democratic U.S. Senate candidate. Now, let's point out that, it is extremely likely that some of these revelations about Plattner are coming from his, I guess now official Democratic rival, Governor of Maine, Janet Mills. She is at the sprightly young age of 77. She would be in her mid-80s if she were to serve a full term in the Senate. And unsurprisingly, there were a bunch of Democrats in Maine who are like, okay, who else we got? This guy, Graham Plattner, comes along. He's an oysterman. He's the harbor master of Sullivan. And they're like, we've got the perfect populist guy. He's never been in elected office before, so we don't have to worry about him having any bad votes or, voting for tax increases or stuff like that. However, he had a whole bunch of, really incendiary Reddit comments, described himself as a communist, and now he says, well, no, I only said that stuff when I was young and foolish at age 37, 5 years ago.
Yeah.
But you're like, that's got to be the absolute worst. No, I think accidentally getting the Totenkopf, that is the skull and crossbones, death's head in German, that was the symbol of the SS. I will refer all listeners to the brilliant comedy sketch by that British duo, With the Baddies. We have skulls on our caps. Skulls can be. Pirates have skulls. No, pirates. I didn't say we're fun. Anyway, it's a brilliant sketch, but it's like, look, if you've seen an Indiana Jones movie, if you've seen any movie with Nazis, with the SS, you've seen the uniform and the scary, and like, so there's a couple. Plattner says, I didn't know. I had no idea. I was drunk. It's Croatia. I go in and say I want a skull and crossbones. Well, there are a couple of problems with that. Problem number one is there's a report in the Jewish Insider that's not a sneer. That's the title of the publication. That someone who socialized with Plattner when he was living in D.C. more than a decade ago said that Plattner specifically acknowledged that the tattoo was a Totenkopf, the death's head symbol adopted by the infamous Nazi SS unit that guarded concentration camps in World War II. So if that's true, he knew darn well exactly what it was. Even if that's not true, let's say this person's misremembering the conversation or something. Allegedly, he's a history buff. The New Yorker profile in him talked about how, he would devour books on military history. Now, I've posted the picture of the, I put links to the picture in today's Morning Jolt newsletter. Craig, you and I are roughly the same age. We know what Skeletor looks like.
Yes,
we know what the Red Skull from Captain America comics looks like. We know what the Crystal Skull from Indiana Jones movies looks like. We know what the Grateful Dead looks like. We've seen a whole bunch of skulls, right? This is not the skull and crossbones you're used to seeing on pirate ships and pirate movies and stuff like that. Yeah. This looks exactly like the SS symbol. So it's just very hard to believe that this guy, who's a history buff, but he got this in 2007, right? My older child was born in 2007. So this tattoo is now old enough to vote. It's not like he just got it and 18 years, he's been looking at this in the mirror and it never crossed his mind. Yeah. Hey, is that the SS skull? Is that
Wait a minute.
Yeah, I know I'd seen that somewhere before.
Reading one of his many history books, he's like, wait a minute, that's my tattoo. Yeah. You know what's funny about this, and I don't know if you've thought about it this way, what would you say if you get caught in something like this and you can't tell the truth and you are a politician? That was the only excuse he could use, that he didn't know what it was. It's a literal tattoo on his body. There's no other way out of this other than to say I was drunk, I was confused, I didn't know, and I've left it there now for 18 years of my life, still being confused about it, not really worried.
I'm not a Nazi. I'm a drunken idiot who accidentally got a Nazi tattoo. Now, again, the other thing, problem one is getting it. Problem two is keeping it for 18 years. Although he said he's now put a new tattoo on it. Sadly, it's a hammer and sickle. No, it's a Sutterond. No, it's Nordic runes. Yeah. It's a guy with a Charlie Chaplin mustache. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah.
All right, Craig, you're right of center. How many times in your life have you dealt with somebody who called you a Nazi because they disagreed with you?
More times than I'd like to.
Right.
And honestly,
my guess is a huge portion of our listeners have had that.
Yeah.
You know, call me crypto Nazi one more time, and you'll stay plaster. To quote the founder of Nazi. Like we for obvious reasons. If you're right of center, you don't like being called Nazis. It is an unfair accusation in 99.9% of the times, but not in the case of Paul Ingrassia, who said that he had a Nazi streak when he was looking to become head of the office, especially. I don't want a Nazi streak in any of my government officials. No. I don't want a Nazi dollop. I don't want a Nazi dumpling. I just not a Nazi molecule. Nothing, you know.
Nothing.
So like I look at this and I think like if the fascinating thing, not all, but there are a bunch of Democrats, mostly of the Bernie Sanders gave a full-throated defense of Plattner. And it's one of those things where I'm sitting there thinking like, they will call you a Nazi for wanting tax cuts. They will call you a Nazi for supporting President Trump, for wanting immigration enforcement, for being pro-life, which, by the way, Nazis were not pro-life. They were really pro-death, right?
Yeah.
You'll get called a Nazi for anything. But having the SS symbol tattooed on your chest, that's not a Nazi thing. It could happen to anybody.
Yeah, it is amazing to watch the about face with that. It's probably the most funny part about it. And I wonder if moving forward, Democrats will at least ask people to take off their shirts and check for tattoos before they let more.
Yeah. This to me said, okay, this is why you got to nominate Janet Mills, because, you know, with all of her flaws being 77 or 79, she's not, you know, she doesn't have Nazi tattoos. As far as we know.
As far as we know.
Everybody, you know, like, by the way, Susan Collins, last time she was up was 2020. She was trailing every poll to, I believe, a Democrat called Sarah Gideon last time. And then on election day, she won by like 8 points. Wasn't even close.
Wow.
There was a huge, you know. So I jokingly say, I didn't even think about the irony of this. For a long time, I have said Susan Collins, the nice lady of the Senate, like the most moderate Republican you're going to find out there, sits on a throne of skulls like Conan the Barbarian of all of her opponents. Skulls, didn't even think about that. And so my sense was that she was a really, I don't want to say guarantee. It's Maine, it's a swing state, but like she's a much stronger candidate than she looks to be at first glance. Well, who do you want to nominate? The corpse or the Nazi? That's your choice, Maine Democrats. By the way, somehow the New York Post did not go with this headline. Main Kampf. How like that? You know, like isn't that? You know, I saw that. I'm like, I don't want to write anything else today. I'm done.
No, that's a miss.
That's a really high bar to top for crazy for the rest of the week.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to top that for maybe the rest of the year.
But as usual, we did not see that coming.
Awesome, man. That was fun.
And thank you for listening to the 3 Martini Lunch.